pattern matching part and says, hey, dude, bad weather coming. And that old codger says it out to you, and you take note of it. Sure enough, there's bad weather.
Yeah.
Now, is the guy psychic? Well, that actually, that's perhaps a distinction with no difference whatsoever for us.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it doesn't matter if they are, or if they're just really good at aggregating past experience and applying it to current conditions.
Okay.
Now, we've been pretty good with weather because we're sensitized to that. Some of this other stuff that's been coming out, we've been reluctant to put it out there because of the emotional painting that is going on from the official sources. But it is very true to say that since 1997, with some real seriousness, the nature of those emotional layers are becoming less and less effective on a larger segment of the population. So more people now are discussing with less censure certain subjects like UFOs, extraterrestrial races, etc.
Then, would you would you say, Clif, that because of this increase in, would you call it referencing, or
Correct.
Okay, in the referencing of the concept of reptilians, is it because they really are there and they're showing, or more knowledge to the general public is becoming is slowly percolating to the top, or is it just that so many people are talking about it, but it doesn't make it real or unreal?
It's the contention of our work that the latter part of your statement is not true. That there's no such thing as a meaningless coincidence if you examine it at a particular level, especially when you're dealing with language and emotions. So I would have a tendency to favor the idea that because it's appearing now, there is some significance to it. Now, the significance is going to be really hard to put down. Is it because there's, a big spaceship full of the fellows out there about to do battle with the giant space goat with the militancy ray? Well, who knows? But if that happened, it's like, oh yeah, okay, then we can go back and double check and say, yeah, this event occurred and this language showed up about 6 or 8 months before, so now we know what that means. And see, that's really the stage we're at.
And that's in
the real problem.
Right?
I mean, this is not. That's why I'm very discouraging with George, because any of the clients that subscribe to the reports, I make sure that they understand that this is a work in progress, and we're always dinking with the process to try and improve it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're on the right track, because we're kind of making it up as we go along in terms of the values and so on. Yeah. For instance, what is the shelf life of an individual given word? We just have to apply a number that's our best guess and see if it holds out over time.
Okay.
So, in that sense, I would agree that there's been a lot of discussion about it. There certainly is a very much larger segment of the population willing to consider such things in an open, non-judgmental fashion. But, and I'm really sure it's meaningful, but I'm not sure that I can tell you what direction that meaning might come from.
Okay. In referencing to the concept or term reptilian, in what context are you getting information?
It seems to be showing up as a cross-entity. I'm not sure this is going to answer your question, but it seems to be showing up as a cross-entity reference. So, for instance, we find words that cluster around a central idea that we call an entity. And one of the entities might be Bush, and we've got as the Bush admin and all the different ways you can think of him, all clustered around together, we call the Bushista entity. Right. Another entity is markets, and that's all the paper trading, that kind of thing. Now, what's curious is that we're finding references to those kind of subjects, not that particular one exclusively, that are appearing in entities where it shouldn't. Or rather, where we, shouldn't say that, rather where we haven't in the past found it. Now, is this because of the secrets revealed coming out? Operating in a metadata layer, in which we're all going to find out there's a whole lot of stuff that we haven't been, that the powers that be haven't been all that honest with us about? Maybe so.
Wow.
Because a lot of that does seem to be cross-connected to this metadata layer interaction.
That is not a happy concept for me, I have to tell you, the reptilian.
I hate to say it, but basically we don't get much in the way of happy out of our work.
Oh, no. In referencing, and I think this is what I was trying to get at before, in referencing when you see this term, does anything go along with it, such as beware, enemy, whatever?
Okay, now, this isn't like anything like the Bible codes or automatic writing or any of that sort of stuff, okay?
Yeah.
So we get a particular term, and we might find 45,000 words that hang around with it.
Wow.
Okay, so yes, within that context,
Yeah.
those words do appear, because those are many of the words that are discussed on the at the aggregate level, have emotional values that go over to those quasi the same meanings within our lexicon. So yes, those words do appear. But is it like Ouija board or any of this other kind of communication in any other form? No. What we're attempting to do is to pick up that part of the communication that's verbal but is hidden. So basically what I'm saying is, if it's in the human mind, we'll pick it up.
Maybe that's what I'm looking for, and that is that it's coming from the subconscious mind of mankind, and not so much that it's out there, and now we better start to be aware of it and look after and look for it.
It depends on how you define the subconscious and whether or not we're actually getting at that. And there would be a whole lot of dispute in all kinds of circles that we're not. So I would have to favor an idea that said that it may not be pertinent. If something is out there, we're basically in a closed system. If you go back to Buckminster Fuller and you read Synergetics, which takes you a long time, you get to some really key concepts. And if you look at the universe as a closed system, there cannot be, in a rational fashion, any unrelated and unmeaningful events. Logically can't happen, simply because we're all in a closed system. So it's kind of like if we were all marbles rattling around in a pinball game, striking various little things. Each time we strike it, it's going to have an impact on other marbles, and et cetera, in our own track. And so each strike, seemingly random, seemingly disconnected, is nonetheless all interconnected in a grand chain. If you viewed things from that holistic viewpoint, then it doesn't matter whether we're tapping the subconscious or there's some kind of a pre-conscious or superconscious approach where we're picking up psychic leakage or whatever. Basically, the real question that should be asked, do we get any happy words around that subject? Or maybe the real question should be, what's the preponderance of the words that are associated with it going towards?
Okay. Tell me.
They seem to converge towards the next layer of change that we're anticipating in the metadata layer, which we think is sometime beyond June of 2006. And we're going to shift from militancy and aggression into a phase where the giant space goat's going to change the ray on us to conflict. War.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. Many words associated with that.
Oh, George. Cliff, this is... And because George has been saying the same thing, too. And, of course, he gets, the information, and then he begins to interpret it with you and on his own. But let's go back to December. Remember, for several runs now, you have been talking about an event happening on or around the beginning of December. Do you still pick that up in the runs?
Oh, yeah, it's still there. The language and the immediacy value shifted it forward, and we've assigned a date, which our dates are a little screwy because, again, we're kind of making up the numbers as we go along, but it's going to come around November 21 as the beginning of what we're calling an emotional release period, which maybe we should really term a period of very intense change, perhaps, and the acceptance of that change and that change begetting more change and so on.
Do you have any idea what might be the precipitating event?
We don't know the nature of it in the sense that we don't have something that says, giant space goat fart's going to blow up the world or anything. What we do get is we get a series of words around it describing the emotional tone of it, which isn't too good, I'm sorry to say. I mean, a lot of words going to the idea of sorrow and wounding, pain, suffering, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the vast preponderance of them, say better than 65% within our framework, and I hate to get into this, but are continental U.S. of A focused.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you
Could
think
be geopolitical, though. I mean, there's the real rub, right?
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, because look what Cesar Chavez from Venezuela just did. He removed his money from the U.S., went over to Europe, and converted his U.S. dollars into euros.
Correct. So